Hi there, and thank you for joining me for this live reading of Love Shots. This is the fourth book in the Bluestone series by Isobel Reed, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. What the fuck? Teddy seethed. I can't believe you just threw a fucking lamp at me. He could hear his voice getting louder and louder by the second. What the hell is wrong with you, Summer? Me? Summer's shriek easily matched his volume as her hazel eyes narrowed on him. What the hell is wrong with you? A second later, something else was hurtling toward him, only just missing his head. An ear-piercing smash later, he spared a glance at the floor to his left and couldn't help but scowl. This had to be a bad dream. Dark liquid was now seeping into his hardwood floors while crooked shards of glass stood to attention. Have you lost your damn mind, woman? That was an $800 bottle of whiskey. Oh no, she mocked, bringing her chipped red nails up to cup her face. Sucks when someone takes something that isn't theirs, doesn't it? He'd had enough. For the last goddamn time, Mickey wanted to sell and I wanted to buy. End of story. You weren't in the country. You're never in the country. How on earth was I supposed to know Mickey promised you the bar? I'm not a damn mind reader, Summer. Really, this is all my fault, Teddy thought as he mentally cursed himself. It was too late for this bullshit. Why on earth did he even answer the door? He was old enough and ugly enough to know that nothing good ever came from answering your door after midnight. He certainly hadn't been prepared to see Summer Willis, Mickey's granddaughter. It had been 5 long years since he'd seen the beautiful blonde pain in his ass. And now here she was, using the contents of his shelf and his living room wall for target practice because, apparently, Mickey had at one point in time offered her the bar Teddy had just purchased. After muttering some imaginative expletives under her breath, she took a step toward him, then another. He finally had a chance to study her, something he hadn't been able to do since she'd barged her way into his apartment and started yelling. Something was off. The Summer he knew was always so put together, composed, perfect, even when the words coming out of her pretty little mouth were anything but. Errant strands of hair hung down from the messy knot at the top of her head. Her short-sleeved blue blouse was slightly crumbled, and he noticed mud stains streaking the knees of her jeans. But it was the skin above the black bracelets covering her wrist that his eyes zeroed in on. Bruises. What the hell is that? Before he had time to think, he was reaching for her arm to get a better look. Who did this to you? His forceful demand was a direct contradiction to the gentle way he circled her wrist as he held it up. He didn't miss her flinch, or the flicker of sadness in her deep green-brown eyes, a rare display of vulnerability there, gone so fast, if he'd have blinked, he would have missed it. Her expression had quickly defaulted back to hard as she wrenched her hand back. None of your business. Teddy didn't think Summer noticed that she had just basically admitted to a person being responsible for those marks, but he had. And he wouldn't be forgetting anytime soon. He wasn't about to push her for more information right now, though, not unless he wanted his apartment trashed even more than it already was. What can I do? He kept his voice calm, even though he was feeling anything but. Someone had hurt Summer. His Summer. She was never yours. Give me back my bar, she retorted. You know I can't do that. I know you've not been back for a while, but ever since I left the Navy, Mickey's has come to mean a lot to me. Her expression betrayed her again, instantly going from rage to shock to concern at his revelation. You left the Navy? Why? There she was. There was the woman he remembered. It was good to know she was still there. Yeah, Dollface, I left. 3 years ago. Moved back here. Your granddaddy set me up with a job at Mickey's, and now, well, you know the rest. Don't think I missed you ignoring the why, Teddy. The sass was back. That's right, doll. I am ignoring it because it's a long damn story and I am too damn tired. So if you're done redecorating my apartment, he gestured around the small dark room, even more dark since she smashed one of the 2 lamps that he had, I think it's time for me to head back to bed. Summer gulped. How could she look both scary and vulnerable at the same time was a complete mystery. I need a job, she blurted. I planned on working at Mickey's. A laugh escaped before he had time to swallow it. Jesus Christ, Summer. This is how you ask me for a job? Barging in here at 2 a.m., throwing my shit at me and calling me an asshole? The corner of her lips curved into a smirk. He was reminded right then and there what a smile from Summer Willis could do to him. I need somewhere to crash, too. I'm assuming that since you're living here, the apartment above the bar is vacant? His body was vibrating now. This chick was something else. You're batshit fucking crazy. Do you know that? A full-blown smile now had blossomed across her face. Her hand went in front of her, palm facing up. Keys? She really wasn't kidding. She wanted him to give her a job and a place to live, after the shit she just pulled. Unbelievable. When he didn't reply quickly enough, she spoke again. Come on, Teddy. We both know you're going to let me stay there, and you know as well as I do, I'm the best darn bartender in this town. I've been working on and off at Mickey's ever since it was legal. Now hand over the keys, and you can go get your precious beauty sleep. He leaned down, ignoring the vanilla scent filling up his lungs, and whispered into her ear. Not a fucking chance, dollface. Teddy couldn't sleep. He'd tossed and turned all night after kicking Summer out of his apartment. A mixture of guilt, intrigue, and confusion meant he was now wide awake, and the sun wasn't even up yet. So much for sleeping in. He stared up at his bedroom ceiling, replaying his fight with her over and over again. What the heck was she doing here? He'd been back in Bluestone 3 years, and she'd never once ventured back before, not even for a visit. One thing was for sure, though. Summer Willis had always been his weakness, and if the lack of sleep was anything to go by, she still was. While he was being honest with himself, he should probably also admit that she had been the reason he'd moved back to Bluestone in the first place. Getting a job at Mickey's wasn't a coincidence either. It was a connection to her, the bar her grandfather owned. Well, until recently. Now Teddy was the proud new owner. He'd always wondered about her, even if it had been years since they'd seen each other. Despite them not being on such a friendly basis right now, they had been close at one point in time. Really close. They'd grown up together, and Teddy wasn't ashamed to admit that he'd had one hell of a crush on her. There was even a time he thought she felt the same way about him, but he'd been wrong. Colossally wrong. Letting out a heavy sigh, Teddy pushed himself up and out of bed. He needed to stop thinking about Summer. That ship had sailed. If he wasn't going to sleep, then he'd do something useful. There was always work to be done at the bar. So there it was. He had a plan. He would just quickly jump in the shower, then he'd head on over there. 15 minutes later, Teddy was out the door and headed to Mickey's. What he definitely wasn't doing was thinking about Summer Willis. Keep telling yourself that, buddy. Choosing to ignore the troll inside his head, he instead focused on his walk. Living in town had its advantages. He was just a 5-minute stroll to the bar. While walking with purpose through the parking lot, something to the side of him caught his eye. His steps stalled as his attention went to the blue Prius in the far corner. Cursing under his breath, he was back on the move as he started toward it. The closer he got, the angrier he became. Unfucking believable, he huffed as he came to a halt by the car door. One knock on the window later, he was looking into Summer's startled eyes. When she didn't immediately roll down the window, he impatiently gestured for her to do so. But she simply frowned and scrunched up her nose. He realized then that his pissed-off expression probably wasn't doing him any favors. Trying his best to keep his tone gentle, he decided to ask her instead. Please, Summer, roll down your window. A cute little grimace took over her face as she pressed down on the window button. Morning, she shyly greeted. You gonna tell me why you're sleeping in your car? I'm being environmentally conscious? He raised an eyebrow and was rewarded with a smile that hit him full force in the chest. You're not staying with Mickey? She looked at Teddy like he was certifiable. Mickey's gone. I thought you knew. He sold the house the same time he sold you the bar. Teddy had no idea, but that wasn't important right now. What was important was why the hell Summer was sleeping in her car and not staying with friends or in a hotel. What about Lainey? You couldn't stay with her or book into a hotel? Running her hand through messy blonde strands, she sighed. Lainey's married and has 2 kids under 5. The last thing she needs is me showing up at her door at 2 a.m. asking for a place to crash. He was about to protest, but she cut him off. It's not a big deal, Teddy, really. It's just one night. You don't have to worry about me bringing down the property prices. Give me a minute and I'll get out of your hair. Where will you sleep tonight? She shrugged. I'll find a motel or something. She'd never been a good liar. She was definitely planning on sleeping in her car again. His gaze drifted to the bags and clothes filling her back seat. She was in trouble, but it didn't make sense. Just a few hours ago, she'd been pissed that he'd been the one to buy Mickey's and not her. How could she afford to buy a bar, but not a hotel room for the night? He knew he was seriously going to regret what he was about to say, but he said it anyway. You can stay in the apartment above the bar until you find somewhere. The relief in her eyes twisted his gut. And I might be able to throw a couple of shifts your way. Now she was beaming. The guilt he'd been feeling all night came flooding back. He should have given her the keys when she'd asked and saved her from the night in her car. Anything could have happened to her, anything, and it would have been his fault. All the signs that she'd needed help had been there too. The crumpled, mud-stained clothes, her chipped nail varnish, messy hair. Some Navy SEAL you are. Then there was that bruise. His fists clenched at the memory. He knew right then he needed to put his feelings aside and do what he could to help her, even if she was a giant, beautiful pain in his ass.